Namaste and thank you for listening to me. I'm very grateful. Today I want to talk about the ego. In spiritual circles, the ego is seen as the great enemy, the enemy to be vanquished and destroyed and crushed and, defeated. And in some many ways, the ego has become the spiritual equivalent of the Christian devil, an absolute evil enemy you have to destroy. Your ego is there's even a book called The Ego is the Enemy, which I didn't like because the guy, he had some weird definition of the ego. He built a weird straw man definition of the ego and he destroyed that. Yeah. So, is the ego your enemy? Do you have to crush the ego? Let's start by defining what the ego is, because different people use it to mean different things. The ego is the inner voice, this constant negativity in ourselves, this constant thinking pattern that's just running in a loop non-stop, jig, 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 jig. It's our, you can call it the shallow self, the lower self, the part of us that identifies strongly with not just the body, but the thinking patterns. So I am Shantanu, I am X years old, these are my hobbies, this is what I'm good at, I'm a introvert or I'm a outgoing person. The ego has some very strong opinions about everything. And it tries to, like a train, it tries to continue going on the same track. It's very happy if you continue doing the same thing. You try to get off the track, it gets very angry and fights you. And the problem with spirituality is that spirituality is going off the tracks. Spirituality is carving your own way. Spirituality is leaving the safe train tracks and going off into the wild on foot, with nothing but your clothes. And the ego doesn't like that. And so the ego is seen as the enemy, and the ego does fight you very violently. And it can completely destroy your meditation, your progress, your everything. Ego here, we don't mean Freudian ego in that psychological sense. I'm talking about ego in the spiritual sense, the Eastern sense. In Eastern, they say identification with body is ego, but that's wrong, because nowadays very few people are identified with their body. They're more identified with their mind. We are more mental people. We're always thinking, tick, 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 tick. The mind is always thinking, and we have mental opinions about everything. I'm a Democrat, I'm a Republican, I'm a conservative, I'm a liberal, and those people, the enemy, I hate them. We have these strong mental opinions we identify with. And even the most spiritual people, they have these opinions, they'll believe that everybody who's a conservative is a racist, or all liberals are cowards and traitors, or something like that. So, the problem with this is that these thinking patterns, they're very strong, and they've been with us since our childhood. And they stop our progress. And what the ego does is, the ego can be thought of as a complete personality construct. And every time we meditate, the ego tries to swallow, that progress and try to take over it. The path of spirituality, the path of meditation is the path of going beyond the ego. But the ego hijacks it, and that's hence you get all these guru with this, big grandiose, claims. Gurus who have sex scandals, or who steal money from their students, or who emotionally blackmail the students and give them money, or other type of abuses, which too many to count. And this is the most common obvious case, but there are other cases as well. I've talked about this before, how spiritual people, they have this spiritual arrogance. Oh, we are so spiritual, we can't stay away from these unspiritual people. Oh no, I don't like them. These materialistic people always on their Facebook and their TikToks. We are better than them. That's the ego, right? That's the ego coming from the background, from the back door, and hijacked your progress. Instead of being a very handsome, rich, sexy person, you're the most spiritual person of all. You're like, yeah, I'm the best. I'm the most spiritual person in this room. I'm more enlightened than you are. I am more peaceful than you are. I am more empty than you are. You may be the emptiness, but I am more empty than you. Dude, I'm the best. And that's the ego coming in from the back door and hijacking your spiritual growth. And so rightly the ego is seen as the enemy, something to go beyond, something to destroy. But today I would like to stand up for the ego, as it were. Help defend the ego, as it were. Because this fighting attitude we have towards the ego is not helpful. What I have found is that the ego is more like a scared child. The ego is us at 5 years old, and I think there's some psychological research for this as well, that our personality is fixed by the time we reach 5 or 6 or maybe 7 years of age. Our personality is fixed based on our experiences until then, and we continue seeing the world from the eyes of the little child. So the child saw the world as unpredictable, cruel and cold and uncontrollable, and that's how we grew up, and that's how we see the world, as unpredictable, cold, cruel, uncaring. And the ego is a scared little child, and it doesn't know what to do, so it's making up rules as it's going along. It makes the rules like, oh, I have to be nice to everyone, otherwise people will hate me. Or I have to be angry all the time, I have to fight, attack people before they attack me, because everyone hates me and everyone will attack me, so I might as well attack them first. Or that, other people of the other tribe are all evil, whatever. And so ego is like a scared little child that's made up a lot of false truths about how the universe works, and is trying to live up to those rules. And it's very scared all the time. That's the thing about the ego. It's scared shitless all the time. You don't know what fear is until you know the ego. It's like a scared child just sitting in the dark crying. So next time you think about hating the ego, picture a 5-year-old child sitting in the corner crying. That's who you're hating, in a way. That's all your loathing and contempt is for. That's not to say the ego is not powerful and it cannot crush you. It will crush you. But it's not useful to see it as the enemy. That's not, in my guidance when I was meditating, the guidance I was given was to have compassion even for the part of me that's fighting the light. Because that part is not evil as such, it's not the enemy. It's just a scared little child who doesn't know what to do and is doing what he or she has been trained since childhood, what it taught itself. If you cannot have compassion for that 5-year-old child, you cannot have compassion for anyone, and you've failed at meditation. You've failed on the path. And this is the hard thing. You have to have compassion with somebody who's actively trying to sabotage your spiritual progress. But you have to realize that the ego does it not because it hates you, but is very, very scared. And that's all it knows. It just knows it's scared of change. It's scared of new things. It just wants to be in control, and it wants everything to remain as it is. And when we attack ourselves, when we loathe ourselves, say, oh, I'm such a bad meditator, like you try to sit for an hour meditation and after 5 minutes you get bored and you hate yourself. I'm such shit, I'm a crap meditator. Or you're addicted to something like alcohol or cigarettes or social media, try to give it up and it doesn't work, and you hate yourself. You're attacking yourself. That's the ego attacking itself. A part of your mind attacks itself. And that's why when you fight yourself, you lose. So you cannot really fight yourself. You cannot fight your own inner self. The way to defeat the ego is through love and compassion. If I've said this before, you need to accept your humanness. We are all imperfect. We lose our temper. We might not be as kind as we should be. We might not be as compassionate, and that's fine. We are human. We have to accept our humanness, our imperfections. We have to accept who we are as we are in this moment, with infinite love and compassion. That's how, the universal intelligence sees us, the spirit sees us. It sees us with extreme love and compassion. And if you want to go beyond the ego, you have to start seeing yourself and the world like that, with extreme love and compassion. You cannot defeat the ego by fighting it. You're going to lose. And this is a very practical thing you're going to lose, because say you're 35 years old and you start meditating today. You're like a 1 week-old baby in meditation terms, while the ego is 35 years old. The ego has 35 years of experience on how to fight you. So who do you think is going to win? You fight yourself, you're going to lose every time. And sometimes you might force the ego, you might use your willpower to crush it down. But the ego remembers, it just stays quietly, and then suddenly it just attacks you like a snake. That's what happens when people, they do something really stupid, like they'll gamble out their money, or they'll get drunk and pick a fight with somebody and thrown in jail, or they'll be rude to somebody they love and they'll ruin their relationship. That's the ego striking back, because ego, it is very cunning. If you attack it, you might suppress it temporarily, but it comes back and fights back you stronger. Like I said, it has a lot more experience than you have, the thinking mind, the logical mind. So you cannot defeat the ego with war. You have to have love and compassion for it, for yourself. And that's what I keep saying. That's where this save the world social justice movement is wrong. They want to save the world, but they don't have any compassion for themselves. They're full of hate and self-loathing. How do I know? Because only people who are self-loathing want to save the world. If you want to really save the world, you should start with yourself. Have love and compassion for the inner child, and then that love, heal yourself first before you want to heal the world. So we were talking about the ego. How do you deal with the ego? The best way is with compassion and by getting in touch with your higher self and letting, the part of you that's listening to this and the part of me that's talking, that's still the ego, right? That's a funny thing. It's the ego fighting itself. It's like a whole illusion. That's what they, the old Eastern, they said it's all a dream illusion. That's what they meant. The ego is fighting itself, and there's part of the ego becomes spiritual and meditates, other one tries to become the enemy and fight. And that's why when we fight the ego, we lose. The correct way is to get in touch with your higher self through meditation or through silence or through love and compassion, and let your higher self heal the ego. And you know that it's working because your higher self will only have love and compassion. It will not see faults. It will not see the ego as an enemy, because the ego is not the enemy. The ego is you. It's your inner child who's terrified. And if you kill the ego, you also kill all the good things this child has. The child is full of love, and the creativity, our creative side, it always comes from the so-called ego, because this child is very creative. All the best musicians, all the best writers, all the best painters, all the best people in whether in social media or marketing, whatever, they're all in touch with their inner child, and they let that child come through. So if you kill that ego, you're also killing a part of you that's very important for your emotional growth. And like if you're the old school where you say the world doesn't matter and you just want to leave it and retire to the Himalayas, then yeah, that's fine, then do whatever you want, kill the ego. But if you want to have a joyful and divine life, you want to live a life, a complete life, a life worth living, then you have to make peace with the ego. You must need to have love and compassion for it, because the ego is your friend. It wants to help you. It just doesn't know how. And you, the thinking mind, the logical mind, cannot control the ego. But the higher mind, our divine self, our universal mind, the part of us that's connected to the universe, it knows exactly how to deal with the ego. And so the correct way is to just surrender to the higher self. Continue doing meditation, continue doing all that, but stop hating yourself. If you accept your humanness, accept your imperfections, and say, yep, that's me. Sometimes I'm not human, I'm not perfect, yep. And if you accept your humanness, you accept your ego, and then the ego starts to relax, and then your higher consciousness starts coming in and taking over your body and your mind, and the ego automatically starts respecting the higher self and becomes more trusting. It starts helping you, becomes your friend instead of fighting you. But it won't do that if you hate it. So don't hate the ego. It's not your enemy. It's a little child just looking for a little love. That's all. Thank you. Thank you for listening to me. I'm very grateful. Namaste. Thank you.